my name is Carmen Willings, and I'm a teacher of students with visual impairments, and I'm also the founder and developer of the online resource Teaching Students with Visual Impairments, found at www.teachingvisuallyimpaired.com. This presentation is entitled Itinerant Teaching Tips and Strategies During Distance Learning and Face-to-Face Instruction. Before I begin, I want to provide you with the opening code for this presentation. The opening code is TIPS. Be sure to watch the entire presentation for the closing code at the end. In this presentation, I will share organizational strategies I use to keep up with materials, time management strategies that I use to best utilize my time, material preparation strategies that allow me to minimize spreading germs and also save time, ECC instructional strategies, tips for dealing with challenging behaviors, an overview of instructional activities I've used during virtual instruction, my strategies for collaborating with teams, and I'll also share what I feel are important skills in being a professional, dealing with challenges, and growing in your career. The first area I want to talk about is organization. Maintaining organization will help you be so much more effective and efficient. When everything is chaotic around me, I find it helpful if I make sure I'm organized so I can feel focused rather than frazzled and so much more productive. As Benjamin Franklin said, for every minute spent organizing, an hour is earned. As part of the ECC, we teach students the importance of being organized, but this isn't just a skill to teach our students. You will help yourself out if you keep your materials organized too. By maintaining organization, you will be able to know exactly where materials and files are and not waste time trying to find them. Additionally, by storing materials properly, they won't get broken. Pictured on this slide are 3 pictures. 2 are from my school office and the workspace where I serve students face-to-face, and the middle picture is my home office where I taught during quarantine. At work, I hung APH motivational posters around the room to motivate the students and myself. I have my production materials organized and stored in one area. I have a separate bookshelf to store my job task boxes. I have them clearly labeled so they are ready to just grab if I take them to another school, or I can grab them as I work with students in my room. I keep the walkways clear and my materials organized so I know exactly where to find things. Finally, by keeping your work areas organized, we are setting an example to our students of the importance of organization. I rearranged my home office space slightly during quarantine so I had a good work area that was organized, which would help me have some semblance of normalcy, and it also helped with productivity. When joining conference calls, it's important to show students, colleagues, and families that you are organized and professional in all situations. As you're organizing your materials, don't forget to set up your car and develop a strategy to keep it clean and organized. While you may not be traveling as much as before COVID, stay on top of your organization. I included a few tips and strategies here that I follow. I used to keep materials stored in my car, but I really try not to do that as it just tends to get cluttered and I need room for groceries. In the front, I keep a USB charger that converts to a wall charger. Office supplies, including a Sharpie, small scissors, pens, pencils, and a notepad, hand sanitizer, tissues, spare change, and handy wipes. I had a GPS and have a small territory now, but when I was the only TVI for a large county, I kept a county map in the car in the event of detours, and yes, there were times when the GPS in my car went out, so it's good to have a backup plan. I like to prepare for all weather events and don't always remember to add and remove seasonal items, so I just keep an ice scraper, umbrella, and blanket in the car at all times. Of course, I have safety items and a first aid kit in the trunk, but I also keep a milk crate so materials don't roll around in the back. With COVID-19, it is also helpful to carry extra masks and even have a face shield, and it's always a good rule of thumb to make sure your gas tank stays at least halfway full. While I usually bring my laptop and projects I'm working on home each night, I haven't always been consistent about making sure I bring critical items home each night. I've learned since the pandemic started that you never know when your school may be shut down or you are told you must self-isolate or quarantine, so it's best to get into the habit of always bringing home the essentials each night. I also recommend creating an emergency list, similar to what you may have at home should there be an emergency and you need to evacuate. If you were given just 30 minutes notice that the school would be shut down indefinitely and you wouldn't be permitted back into the building, what items would you bring home that would allow you to continue to work from home? This will look different for every teacher based on their caseload, so reflect on your students and their needs along with projects you're working on and create a list. I first started creating VI program handbooks when I worked for Wake County Public Schools when I lived in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was a 12-month employee, and during the summers, I, along with one of the other 12-month TVIs, was tasked with creating a handbook that would be ready for returning TVIs at the end of the summer break. We would update it each summer to ensure it contained current information. I continued to update and revise the handbook as I moved to other states and programs as a means to keep myself organized and on top of policies and procedures. I use a 1-inch binder with 8 tab sections and have listed here the different sections that I have. In the first section, I include employee information, such as how to log on to work platforms at home, policies and procedures for attending conferences, and emergency procedures. I also include my workday calendar and student calendars if they are different. I also include a map of all the schools in the district as well as leave forms. In the second section, I include VI program contacts along with special education department chairs, facilitators, data clerks, support staff, and any other district contacts I may need to contact. In the third section, I include my caseload at a glance. I'll go over that more in detail later in the presentation. I also include an all-student caseload that I can reference if there are questions related to other students in the district and who is serving them. The fourth section is where I compile the VI program procedures. I include both state information and local information and district policies that are helpful for reference. The fifth section is where I keep information on assistive technology and the procedures and forms as well as AT checked out in my name. The sixth section is where I keep VI program forms such as permission to conduct a functional vision evaluation, low vision referral forms, photo release forms, and any other release of information forms and parent signature forms. The seventh section is where I keep what I call cheat sheets. I'll go into what I keep there later on in the presentation. I leave the eighth section for meeting notes. As I said, in my handbook, I keep quick reference charts, or what I call cheat sheets. These are charts full of information that I can quickly reference either in IEP meetings or when working with students. I include Braille contraction checklists, a print comparison chart, print size examples, a pictorial tutorial on how to make enlarged copies that can be mounted next to copy machines, screen sharing directions, iPad accessibility references, keyboard shortcuts, and a Google Read and Write quick reference. I keep a binder for data collection where I have a tab for each student. I include the student's class schedule, data collection forms, unique visual needs page, bell schedule, school maps, and assistive technology and accessible instructional materials checked out to the student. Itinerants are known for lugging a lot of materials in and out of schools. COVID-19 has shed light on how this might not be such a good idea. Rather than sharing materials between students, it is even more important to obtain materials for use in the classroom and that they can just stay there. This will minimize cross-exposure to any potential germs. When it is necessary to transport materials, take it from me and save your bag. You can purchase a foldable rolling tote at office supply stores, Target, Walmart, or Amazon, or purchase a dolly and use it with a crate. It's helpful to keep a bag dedicated for each student and keep it maintained so you always have the materials together. Bags with shoulder straps are much easier to carry than those that just have handles. Pictured on this slide is a picture of the Functional Vision and Learning Media Assessment Handbook I put together to organize my functional vision documents. I include federal and state eligibility guidelines, documents to help interpret eye reports, including common acronyms, a diagram of the eye, and functions of the parts of the eye, and a list of materials to include in the Functional Vision Assessment Kit, Functional Vision Evaluation Templates, interview forms, print comparison charts, low vision evaluation referral packet forms, and district guidelines on eligibility and completing initial evaluations and reevaluations. Pictured on this slide is a picture of the IEP Handbook I put together to organize my IEP documents. I include a go-by IEP that outlines how the state and district have indicated the IEP needs to be completed, an annual needs assessment, service intensity rating scales including the visit, an IEP goal bank, handouts and strategies on writing smarter goals, lists of possible accommodations, district procedures on completing IEPs, and district and program forms. Pictured on this slide is the Assistive Technology Handbook I put together to organize my AT forms and procedures. I include information on my district's AT request process, a list of possible VI AT solutions, an AT assessment form, AT consideration forms to help determine features needed on different devices, guidelines on how to write AT items in the IEP by description rather than brand, AT inventory, and requisition forms. If you've been an itinerant teacher for long, you know how important it is to learn how to manage your time. The way to manage your time is to make schedules and allow for wiggle room and flexibility. I see my schedule as a puzzle with moving parts. You need to find the balance between creating and following a schedule and being able to respond to needed adjustments and changes. As Benjamin Franklin said, "You may delay, but time will not." As TVIs, we have many responsibilities that can make our jobs challenging, but it also keeps our jobs interesting. I love that my job is so diverse and each day looks different from the next. As I'm creating my schedule and planning time, I like to have those different tasks represented and incorporated into my schedule. This includes assessment, direct instruction, consultation, material adaptations, ordering materials, material production, instructional planning, case management, attending meetings, and travel. While you may not have to do an assessment every week, and the level of consultations may change each week, you will want to have time in your schedule to allow for these different activities. During pre-planning, when I'm gathering student schedules and bell schedules, I collaborate with each case manager and teacher to determine possible times to work with each student. I generally try to schedule my students that are following the standard course of study first, as their schedules tend to have the least amount of flexibility. Once I have those times set, I schedule my students that are following a modified course of study. In my district, we are strongly encouraged to see the most students on what is identified as federal count days, as it is tied to funding. I try to prevent the dreaded no-shows by coordinating with teachers and parents and asking them to let me know if a student is absent. If a student is frequently absent and the teacher has a track record of not letting me know about the absence, I will text ahead of time to make sure the student is present. I also check schedules with teachers at the beginning of the month to find out if there are any known assemblies or field trips that would prevent me from seeing the student. Know that there will be no-shows. Try to have a backup plan and have work that you can complete in a location you can work in so the time isn't completely wasted. As far as scheduling my lunch, it's important to know the program policies of how long a lunch break is. Some programs I've worked in have allowed me to work through lunch and leave early, which was nice, especially when my kids were young, as it gave me more flexibility for picking them up from school. It is important to be flexible and adjust for meetings and appointments outside of your typical schedule. In addition to my printed weekly schedule, I maintain an old-fashioned planner. I pencil in my regular appointments and add my meetings. To draw my attention to the meetings and appointments that are outside of my routine, I usually place a cloud around them to make them stand out. I also use calendar reminders and invitations for meetings on my phone. I use this planner to document my travel between schools as well. I place a number of miles between schools and the total miles for the day. This makes my monthly travel form easier to complete. If a student cancels and it was a no-show, I cross out the student's name and write NS. This is my way of indicating I drove to the school, but I didn't work with the student, but I can still claim the mileage. At the beginning of the year, I go through my students and I write on the side of each month when the IEP and reevaluations are due so I can better anticipate them. Pictured here is a screenshot that I blurred that shows how I documented my time during virtual instruction. You will, of course, want to use whatever your school or program tells you to use, but if nothing is established, you will want to document how you spent your time, the goals that you are working on with each student, the contacts you've made with students and families, and extra projects or professional development you participated in. You can share access with your supervisors in the event there are any questions in how you spent your time. I left the classroom and became an itinerant teacher in 2003. Even though I've been itinerant for the past 17 plus years, I still need a beginning of the year and end of the year checklist to make sure I haven't forgotten any tasks. I created this one-page checklist entitled Year at a Glance Checklist. I have it as a free printable on my website if you'd like to use it too. I list out the office tasks that need to be completed as well as those tasks that need to be completed at the different schools I travel to. I also include mid-year and end-of-year tasks on the sheet. Examples of activities include updating data sheets, updating student unique needs pages, creating a caseload overview chart, and putting together and maintaining working folders. I maintain working folders for each student on my caseload. I purchase folders with prongs during back-to-school sales and make sure I have the student's most current IEP, Functional Vision and Learning Media Assessment, Orientation and Mobility Evaluation, and Low Vision Evaluation. I include all eye reports I have on file, as doctors' impressions can change from year to year, and it's helpful to maintain copies that may include different diagnoses. It's also helpful to see any progression in change of acuities. I also include any AT evaluation and extended loan forms in the folder and any other miscellaneous forms including consents and reports. One of the first things I do each school year is create a caseload at a glance chart. Here is an example of a blank chart that I use. This is a quick reference of all the information I need in one location. It consists of a chart with a row for each student and 5 columns titled Student Information, School Information, Team Information, VI Service and AT, and Medical Information. In the student section, I include the student's name, date of birth, what type of curriculum they are following, their grade, parents' names, address, and contact numbers and emails. In the second section, which is the school section, I include the school name, address, phone and fax number, hours, the department chair, facilitator, special education administrator, data clerk, and receptionist. I can't tell you how many times these reference lists have helped save me, as I'm horrible about remembering names. In the team section, I include the IEP due date, reevaluation due date, primary and second areas of eligibility, case manager, any therapists, and the classroom teachers. And if it's an academic student and they're in high school, next to the classroom teachers, I'll also write what subjects they teach. In the VI Service and AT section, I list the VI and O&M service time listed in the IEP, as well as assistive technology the student uses. And in the medical section, I write the date of the most recent eye report, ophthalmologist or optometrist, visual diagnosis, corrected acuity, and whether the student qualifies for quota funds and the student's state ID number. As I'm visiting schools during pre-planning or when visiting a new school with a referral, I make sure to pick up a copy of the school map from the front office. I keep this in my data collection binder for quick reference, and I'm sure to note where the school bathrooms are located. I talk with the receptionist, teachers, or media center specialist on where I can store materials to reduce the amount of materials I need to transport between schools. I also note where the copy machines are located and whether I need to have a copy code to use them. Know where the teacher workrooms are located and what resources are available for your use, including die cut machines and laminators. Find out if there are certain areas to park and where you can park to avoid car rider lines. Respect reserved parking spaces and know that numbered spots mean they are assigned. Be sure to know the emergency plans and evacuation procedures too. Finally, But perhaps most importantly, determine where you will be able to work with the student and also determine backup locations. You won't be able to thank yourself enough if you take time to prepare materials in advance. Having materials prepared in advance will allow you to have more flexibility, and you will be able to grab those resources you need when you need them. As Alexander Graham Bell said, before anything else, preparation is the key to success. Pictured here is one of my file drawers that holds all my resources contained in the TVI's Guide to Teaching the ECC, the book and grab-and-go supplements I self-published in 2018. The book contains a collection of all my favorite activities and 32 thematic units where I weave ECC concepts that naturally fit within the units. While you can also store it on a flash drive, in iBooks, or print and place the pages within a binder, my favorite way to use it is to print and store each unit in hanging files. I printed out each unit along with corresponding workbook pages, embossed Braille copies of passages, data collection forms, vocabulary cards, LOTTO cards, and unit-related tactile games, and I store them in each hanging file. This allows me to quickly grab the unit and materials I need. It takes time initially to print, organize, and prepare the materials, but once done, it is a resource that makes instruction in all areas of the ECC much easier. Having an organized curriculum has helped me tremendously, both during face-to-face instruction and during virtual instruction. Pictured here are examples of types of visual efficiency worksheets I included in the Visual Efficiency Grab-and-Go workbook. While the types of worksheets are similar across units, I changed the picture icons or words to tie them into the theme. I print out and store the worksheets by unit and make multiple copies so they're ready to grab and go. I also keep a copy on a flash drive. I can then present the worksheets on an interactive board, and it becomes a way for the student to practice monocular use. I created print-on-demand word lists, phrases, and sentences to correspond with each thematic unit. When working on Braille Fluency, I create an embossed Braille copy for the student and use the print and simulated Braille copy for data collection on any errors. Alternatively, I read the word list or sentences to the student and have the student write it and then read it back to build fluency. For students building their keyboarding skills, I enter these passages into the APH Talking Typer program for students who have learned the keys but need practice building fluency. Rather than typing the same lessons that are included in the program, I create my own lessons using words, phrases, and sentences related to the current theme with a maximum of 10 sentences. This way, the student practices keyboarding skills while learning concepts. This also opens up points of discussion that may be otherwise challenging to naturally discuss. Alternatively, during virtual instruction, I read the passages to the student and have the student type the word list or passages. For some students, I go on to work on editing and formatting the document using keyboard commands. As I said, I created print-on-demand word lists, phrases, and sentences to correspond with each thematic unit. I love having them as print-on-demand because this means I can print a new copy of each worksheet for each student, and I don't need to worry about writing on it. When working on Braille Fluency, I create an embossed Braille copy for the student and use the print and sim Braille copy for data collection purposes and to know what is under the student's fingers. Since the lessons are just one page, you can easily emboss the Braille using a traditional Braille writer. I did this intentionally as I wanted to be able to complete a lesson within our given time. Also, for my first 20 years in the field, I didn't have an embosser, so I needed to type the lessons up on my own using my Perkins Braille writer. If you have a Braille embosser, I have the settings on the PDF set that allow you to copy and paste the passages into Duxbury. Either way, you can decide if you want the passages to be double or single-spaced depending on the student's needs and proficiency reading single-spaced Braille. I recommend getting a binding machine so you can bind each unit into a book. I also order the Braille book covers from APH and trim them to fit the standard size. Don't throw out the strips you cut off though. Those can be used for other projects. I write the title on the spine with a silver Sharpie and also label with Braille so students can practice obtaining the correct book. There are so many activities you can do with students using vocabulary cards. I created the Thematic Vocabulary Card and Checklist ECC Grab and Go book to make vocabulary cards that correspond with ECC units. This allows me to work on literacy activities while building ECC concepts. I intentionally created them the same size as Braille contraction practice cards from APH. I print out the vocabulary card pages onto regular copy paper. I then copy them onto Braille paper. Since the paper is thicker, you will need to feed it in the side tray for specialty paper. Once they are printed on the Braille paper, and before cutting them apart, place them in the Braille writer. Place an orientation row at the top of each card to help the student orient the card. Add the embossed Braille directly under the print. This way, as the student reads the Braille, you will be able to see what is under their fingers. If you have a student who is learning Braille and still uses their vision, you may want a Braille on the back side of the cards so the student doesn't read the print. I use vocabulary cards related to ECC units for many activities. I put them in unit bags so they're ready to just grab and go. Each unit also has a checklist at the end of all the vocabulary cards. You can use this for reference on how to produce the Braille if you're rusty on your Braille skills. This can happen if you've gone for years without having a Braille student on your caseload. You can also use it as a checklist of vocabulary cards introduced and data on accuracy. Make multiple copies of these sheets so you can grab them when you need them and use a different data sheet for each student. The LOTTO cards in the LOTTO card bonus book correspond with each of the thematic units. I printed 3 sets on APH white Braille paper and laminated each set. I printed another full-page LOTTO card to create LOTTO boards. If the student is sensitive to glare or your laminating film is high glare, you can spray the cards with a matte finish. There are a number of activities that can be done with the cards, including identifying and matching pictures at near, as well as for use with monocular practice activities. I'll share more about activities for practicing using low vision devices in the strategies and activities for working with academic students presentation. Next, I want to share with you about interactive sensory stories. To make the stories, start with a short narrative centered around a topic or activity. Incorporate simple text and images on the slide or page and think about how you compare it with real objects and real experiences. By using real topics, facts, objects, and sensory experiences, you will ensure the activity is appropriate for all the students, no matter their age, developmental level, or degree of vision loss. Select simple photos with the background removed and highlight salient features if necessary to help make the item recognizable. Make sure there is an interactive sensory element for each page. Finally, provide multiple exposure to the story. While I had used a couple of them prior to the extended school closure, I created a number of additional ones that I felt would be appropriate for families to use during virtual instruction. I created a total of 16 stories pictured here, along with an instructional manual that provides recommendations of materials and actions for each story. I would send a PowerPoint show to the family as an email attachment, and in the body of the email, I would provide ideas and materials they could gather that would create sensory experiences that were unique to their child. To create interactive choice-making activities, I use the same stories I used for the interactive sensory stories. The student is presented with a line from the story and a target picture. When the student selects the matching picture, there is a fun animation, sound, and transition. I had created several of these activities for use in the classroom prior to extended online virtual instruction. I would present the activity to the student on the interactive touchboard. I also created customized ones of the student's favorite classroom toys. I would hold up the object and encourage the student to scan and locate the picture of the object. When the student touched the right picture, I would allow him to play briefly with the toy, such as a few bounces of a ball or activating an animated stuffed toy. When the school closed and moved to virtual instruction, I created a number of additional stories using concepts and materials I knew would be common and he would be able to use at home. I sent these activities to the student working on visual scanning and making a choice during virtual instruction. The student and parents loved the activities. You can purchase the activities I created, or you can create your own. Most recently, I created tactile games for each of the units to help my student develop skills reading tactile graphics. I created tactile graphics of items related to each unit along with a key assigning different values to each graphic. I either presented the student with a single tactile graphic, point out the features, and encourage the student to locate the identical tactile graphic on the key along with the point value, or I create multiples of each graphic and create a draw pile for a game. I take turns with the student drawing cards from the card pile. I have the student identify the tactile graphic and point value using the key and have the student move the pawn that many spaces. Task boxes are perfect to use with students who are following an adapted curriculum as they naturally have a clear beginning, middle, and end. They help the student build concepts and skills in many areas of the ECC, depending on the particular task that's used. By incorporating literacy opportunities, they prepare the student for not only following verbal directions to complete the task, but written directions too. I like to provide multiple opportunities with the different task boxes and then change them up to help students transfer their skills to new tasks and with new materials. In addition to building fluency, repeated practice also helps a student complete the activity with fading prompts. In this next section, I'll share ECC instructional strategies I use. These strategies are useful whether you are serving students face-to-face or serving them virtually. It is helpful to share these strategies with teachers and caregivers so they can use these strategies too. One of the biggest challenges of being a vision professional is having to know how to meet the needs of a varied caseload. Through the course of my career, I have served students from birth through age 22. I have taught in an inclusive preschool classroom on the campus of the Governor Moorhead School for the Blind in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I've served students itinerantly. I have worked with students who have severe and profound disabilities in addition to their visual impairment, students with autism, as well as students who are on grade level or in advanced placement classes. My students have also had a wide range of visual needs from no light perception, cortical visual impairment, low vision, visual field loss, and progressive eye conditions. Some of you may be O&M specialists, vocational rehab counselors, or low vision therapists and serve a caseload with an even wider diversity as you work with individuals from birth to the elderly. Your clients may have age-related vision loss or veterans and others who have lost their vision following trauma and must relearn how to care for themselves, their homes, and continue to work. Meeting each individual's needs can't be approached with a cookie-cutter method. A visual impairment can impact each person in a different way, but each person has their own learning styles, personality, character, preferences, and aspirations, which is why you must get to know each individual student or client to be effective in your role. I've listed here instructional techniques that I recommend for success. As with any student, it is important that each student is challenged, but as you challenge them, you also want to ensure success. It is common for students to have off days or even off weeks. When this happens and you're working on a skill the student is typically more successful with, use backward chaining until the student is able to be successful completing the activity. You may find other times the student is able to perform better. On those days, be prepared to extend activities so the student is challenged on their on days. Model and demonstrate how to perform a task until the student is able to do it on their own. For students with minimal vision, place your hands under the student's hands and allow the student to feel your hands as you complete a task. As the student learns to complete the task, step back to encourage independence. Build on prior experiences and knowledge. It is okay to repeat topics and even activities from previous years. As a student grows, they will have a deeper understanding of the task and be able to build on prior experiences and knowledge. Ensure the student has an opportunity to have hands-on experience with each step of the process. Make sure the student is involved in each step of the sequence, routine, or activity. You don't want to create a fairy godmother syndrome where the student thinks things just magically appear. Help the student make connections by being a part of the complete process, whether it's a cooking activity, or retrieving materials prior to work and putting them away at the end. I like to maximize instructional time by layering activities. To do this, I ensure the activities that I use with students work on more than one goal or skill area at a time. Finally, always have the next transition in mind. Think of the big picture. Where will the student be in the next school year, after the next transition, or when they are adults? Having a big picture mindset will help you prioritize skills and best prepare the student. Individualize your instruction for each student that you work with. While I like to create materials that I can use in different ways with different students, so I don't have to constantly recreate activities, you need to be sure your plan and materials are appropriate for the student's visual and learning needs. By creating materials and activities that incorporate real objects and materials, you are ensuring it will be accessible. Scaffold instruction so each activity is appropriate for the student's achievement level. Adapt activities to students' interests as well as their abilities and skills. Be sure to adjust your delivery based on the cues from the student. While you want to have a plan at the onset of the lesson, it is so important to be responsive to the student and take advantage of any teachable moments. Remember, learning happens best in the moment and through natural context, so be flexible and adjust the lesson or activity accordingly. You can always reuse a lesson you had planned on using, but it may be impossible to get back a teachable moment. You want to be sure you pace your instruction to meet the student's needs. Be clear and concise with the student and let them know what activities you have planned for the session. I like to give students control and options, such as which we will do first, and even allow them to pick the rules or a choice between materials used. Slow your pacing as needed and allow time for the student to process information. It can sometimes be hard to sit back and not talk and allow the student time to respond. If you have to, sit on your hands. Remember, your goal is to use the lowest level of prompting that is needed, so don't provide hand-over-hand assistance if it's a task the student can do by themselves or with minimal prompts. You don't want to inadvertently teach them learn dependency or that they can never do a task good enough. Finally, be consistent across all environments and model instructional strategies to teachers and parapros so skills can be carried over and addressed throughout the day and have a more meaningful and lasting impact. While it may be easier said than done, the best thing you can do is to try to remain calm when the student has behaviors. Prior to working with a student, talk with teachers and therapists on what behaviors the student has and what the known antecedents are. If the student doesn't know you well, work alongside a trusted adult that the student will work with. Don't fight the battle and think it will be your way or the highway. It may take time to build trust with the student and learn how to best work with them. As you get to know the student, you will be able to anticipate any difficulty the student may have with a lesson. If the lesson starts to fall apart, think on your toes and adjust it. And remember, don't forget to take advantage of teachable moments and be responsive to the student's immediate needs. Pictured on this slide is the prompt hierarchy with the least amount of prompt at the top and the most prompting at the bottom. Using environmental cues is the least amount of prompting you can provide and should be the goal. An example of this is the student hears the Braille writer ding and automatically knows it's time to return to the next line. Next would be gesturing to the student. For students who have normal vision, it could be nodding or pointing. But for students with visual impairments, provide an auditory cue for the student. This could mean tapping or ruffling the Braille paper to signal to the student that they need to remove the Braille paper from the Braille writer in order to read back what they wrote. The next would be indirect verbal prompt. An example of this is the student needs to remove the Braille paper from the Braille writer in order to read it. Prompt the student, we need to read back what we wrote. What do we need to do first? The next would be a direct verbal prompt, such as telling the student it is time to remove the paper from the Braille writer. This is followed by a partial physical prompt. An example of this would be touching the student's elbow to prompt the student to take action. And the final is using a full physical prompt, which is hand under hand or hand over hand to complete the activity. It is important to use real objects and materials with the student, as this will help bridge concepts and make activities more meaningful. When you're selecting objects, select from a wide variety of objects and those with different textures and shapes. You don't have to necessarily go out and buy everything. Trust me, I'm frugal and I'm always on the lookout for items that I already have around my home, those that I can borrow, or those that I can get from around the community or school that are free. I also like to go to the dollar store because you can find such a wide variety of materials and textures to use for different projects. Their selections can change throughout the year and with the seasons, so you never know what you'll find. I also like to check out Walmart, craft stores, Home Depot, and the dollar section at Target. Pictured on this slide is a collection of items I found on just one trip to the dollar store. I found a dustpan and broom, set of washcloths, and a sponge to work on activities of daily living, several locks, a nutcracker, a cheese grater, and small clothespins for fine motor activities. I also found a set of key rings, pipe cleaners, and an ice cube tray for job task activities. Listed here are basic classroom suggestions. Start with the environment by reducing any clutter. This includes clutter that can cause someone to trip, such as toys or materials on the floor. If the student has any usable vision, be sure to reduce visual clutter on the surfaces and walls to help the student visually attend to the task. Increasing spacing between objects and print can also help a student locate, identify, and obtain materials. Consider adding outlines to target areas or highlighting container openings or the outline of inset puzzles to help the student place items where they belong. Just like centers in early childhood settings, create specific areas for activities to help students identify the area with the task. Finally, it is important to establish and maintain a daily routine so the student can anticipate activities and pair transitions in activities with a calendar schedule. On this slide, I have a picture of infant toys with a line drawn through it. Unless you have infants and toddlers on your caseload, these toys are not appropriate for students. Instead, create or purchase age-neutral toys or switch-activated materials. You can ensure topics and lessons are age-neutral when you use facts, real topics, and real objects. As TVIs, we know the importance of taking advantage of teachable moments and incorporating incidental learning. This means taking advantage of opportunities that arise naturally to teach students concepts. This is an ideal way to teach students, but you also need to have a plan. You can't depend solely on teachable moments when providing instruction. You must plan learning tasks and activities, but be willing to change course when the opportunities arise. Remember, there is a difference between taking advantage of teachable moments and flying by the seat of your pants. When you're organized and have a plan or know where to find activities, you will be able to better take advantage of teachable moments. All students, whether or not they have special needs, can have challenging behaviors. That being said, it is common for students who are blind or visually impaired with mild to moderate disabilities to have unique challenging behaviors, such as self-injurious behavior or behaviors that are harmful to others, such as biting, throwing, headbutting, hair pulling, or pinching. I'm certainly no behavior expert, but I will share some tips and strategies I've learned from the experts and those that have worked for me. While it may be easier said than done, the best thing you can do is to try to remain calm when the student has behaviors. Prior to working with a student, talk with teachers and therapists on what behaviors the student has and what the known antecedents are. If the student doesn't know you well, work alongside a trusted adult that the student will work with. Don't fight the battle and think it will be your way or the highway. It may take time to build trust with the student and learn how to best work with them. As you get to know the student, you will be able to anticipate any difficulty the student may have with a lesson. If the lesson starts to fall apart, think on your toes and adjust it. And remember, don't forget to take advantage of teachable moments and be responsive to the student's immediate needs. Some of you may be able to relate to the picture on this slide of the dog from the movie Up, who is looking off to the side in a distracted way with the text "squirrel" below him. Try to relate to the student and how you respond when you are working on a task or trying to attend to a presentation or in a meeting. We all have sensory needs, and most of us have figured out what helps us stay focused. Some of you need to take notes. You might fidget your legs, fiddle with a pen, or chew on gum. Be responsive to the student and help the student find sensory input that will help them attend to a task and for longer periods of time. Some students may need calming activities, while others may need arousing activities. You can help by keeping the student engaged and motivated through fun and meaningful activities and breaking tasks into smaller parts. You can also help by doing your best to minimize auditory and visual distractors. Try to keep each activity short and concrete with a clear beginning, middle, and end. The following is a list of common behavior management strategies that are recommended by most behavior specialists, no matter what behavior program may be used. Be supportive of the student. Remember, no one feels good about being out of control. Plan for success. You can do that by collaborating with the team and working together to find strategies that work best. And if there's a behavior management system in place, follow through on the system so there's continuity within the student's day. Incorporate the student's learning media, sensory needs, and individual preferences. Allow the student to have choices. As I said, I like to build choice-making opportunities into my lessons with all students. While not everything can be a choice, there is always something a student can choose between, whether it's the order of the activities, which book to read, where to sit, or a choice between what materials are used. And of course, consider reinforcers. This could be a simple sticker at the end, a mint, or listening to their favorite song together. While you want to plan for success, know that problems may occur, so be strategic. If a student is known to be physically aggressive, position yourself in a way that allows you to step back and dodge a blow. Don't pin yourself in a corner. As stated before, be sure you know the antecedents so you can try to avoid them, but prepare if they occur. While we typically work close with our students, try to maintain space. Position yourself on a side where they less frequently hit or on the other side of the table. If you have long hair, you don't want it to dangle in front of the child that pulls hair. Ponytails can also be enticing. If hair pulling frequently happens, try wearing a ball cap that keeps your hair up and protects your head. Finally, there are some classrooms where I know I need to take off my earrings, scarf, or lanyard before even entering. You don't want to wear anything that would increase the odds of getting injured. It is so important to build trust with the student. It may take longer to establish trust with some students, but you can do so by being responsive to the student's immediate needs. Listen to them and show you genuinely care. Get on the student's level, walk beside students instead of in front of them, speak in a calm and kind voice, and finally, be consistent in your demeanor and interactions. If you are a hot mess and the student doesn't know what mood you will be in, they won't feel they can trust you. You can help meet the student's needs by considering what sensory experiences you provide in the area in which you work. You may consider brewing a cup of coffee or tea just before the student arrives, diffusing essential oils, or playing calm background music. Pictured on this slide is the setup I have in my room. For the first 2 years working with one of my students, I would brew a cup of coffee, play Enya's Day Without Rain followed by Watermark, and diffuse doTERRA's Balance Blend essential oil. My room can sometimes get really cold, so I also had an electric blanket that we would share as I noticed her hands were very cold. While these sensory supports helped my student, I noticed she was becoming very rigid with them and would become upset if we changed the order of background music, if I diffused a different scent, or if I didn't brew a fresh cup of coffee. This past year, my goal was to stretch my student and help her become more flexible by making changes to the sensory supports. The word of the year was flexibility. When I did this, I didn't change everything at once, but I made changes to the different elements each day. While we all have sensory needs, you want to help the student become flexible in the selection of items that will calm them. We often think of conducting interviews with students when we are conducting the functional vision and learning media assessment, but we should really be having ongoing discussions with the student to get a better idea of their understanding of their vision, what accommodations are working, and what they are having difficulty with. Take advantage of transition times between picking the student up from their room and walking to the instruction area. Ask the student what has been going on in class, at home, and any extracurricular activities. Are they keeping up with classwork and having any difficulties accessing assignments? If the student has received poor grades, have them reflect on it and think about what could be the cause. Don't plant the seed that they can blame it on their vision, though. Did they study and complete the assignments? Did they use their accommodations or tools? If it was related to vision and the student needs extra supports or different supports, remember, you don't have to wait until the end of the IEP to make changes. Amend the IEP if necessary to ensure the accommodations are those that match the student's needs. When working with students following the standard course of study, it is critical to prepare the student for future environments. Students need the skills for household management and independent living, skills to be successful in higher education settings, and in their career choices. You want the student to have a future with no limits. You want the student to be someone that people want to employ, want to be friends with, and want to marry. To prepare students for the future, you need to start early. As discussed in the accommodations presentation, students need to be provided immediate access, but you also must teach the student technology skills so the student is not dependent on large print and Braille, as those formats are rarely available beyond the school years. In this next section, I will share just a few of the ways I've provided instruction for students who are receiving virtual instruction at home or those I serve in a socially distanced capacity or a combination of the two instruction models. As you consider the need for accommodations, it is important to consider the different tasks the student may participate in, or if considering accommodations for the workplace, think about the essential functions of the job that are required for the position. These may include reading textbooks, novels, manuals, emails, online content, information presented on walls or throughout the building. What writing tasks are required, including worksheets or form completion? What tools must the student use? This may include calculators, measuring tools, machinery, or participating in labs. Will the student need to take notes? Will information be presented at a distance? And if so, how will the student access that information? Will information be presented electronically, on a computer or tablet device, or another electronic format? Also think about activities of daily living and how the student will be able to participate and if any accommodations are needed or access to special activities such as specials in school or extracurricular or sport activities. During the spring of 2020, when we were all first quarantined, we offered students and families much flexibility and grace during the adjustment to distance learning. While I continued to meet daily or weekly with some students using conference calling, some of my students and families declined services, and my focus was ensuring the student had access to the core curriculum. At the beginning of the 2020-2021 school year, families were given an option to continue virtual instruction or return to face-to-face instruction with social distancing guidelines in my district. I decided to reflect on how each student did during the spring and the lessons learned to plan for instruction for the new school year. While some students were very successful in the distance instruction model, other students struggled, and areas of the ECC that the student had previously appeared to have mastered were shown to be an area they needed to develop. I took this time to make a chart where I identified common goals and wrote activities for how I could address those goals either virtually or face-to-face. Pictured on this slide is the first page of that chart. I've shared it in the free printables pages of my website, and you are welcome to use it if you find it helpful. Using environmental print is a natural way to practice using a magnifier and will be a skill the student will need throughout their life. Using environmental print to practice using low vision devices is particularly ideal during virtual instruction. With each unit, I include a list of environmental print that is related to the unit, but focus on what is readily available to the student. Collaborate with the classroom teacher, parents, or the student to locate and obtain printed materials. Encourage the student to identify information from the items. Listed here are examples of environmental print that may be available in the school or the student's home. Calendars, certificates, coupons, flyers, food labels, hygiene products, invitations, magazines, manuals, maps, menus, movie or CD jackets, newspapers, pill bottles, product labels, and recipes. It is so important to ensure the student brings their monocular home and uses it in multiple settings and not just in the classroom. The student needs to understand it can and should help them in many environments. In addition to using it throughout the school building to view information on the playground and sides and any other information at a distance, have the student take it to games where they can view the game and the scoreboard. Take it to fast food restaurants where they can view the menu. Take it on trips and use it to view bus numbers or train numbers and destinations and street signs. Other activities at home can include watching television and video gameplay, observing wildlife, and people watching. Using a computer as an instructional tool can help students learn cause and effect, help them work on visual efficiency skills such as visually scanning, visually attending, visually tracking, and visual discrimination. It can help work on eye-hand coordination if you're using a touchscreen. There are some free or paid software programs available to work on cause and effect, and you can also make your own. For students working on these type of goals, I ensured the students had a computer available at home and a switch interface if working on cause and effect and the student required to switch. Our district has a subscription to help kids learn, so I have the students and families use that or other free cause and effect online programs, and I also created and sent home the sensory stories and choice-making activities I spoke about earlier. During virtual instruction, I was able to continue using task box activities with my student. Through video conference meetings, we would work together to replicate these activities at home. I was able to adapt the activities based on what materials the student had at home. She already had a Perkins Braille writer at her house, and we made sure prior to going on extended leave, she had plenty of Braille paper. During our conference calls, her mother would position the laptop so it angled down towards the Braille writer so I could see where the carriage was in relation to the paper, as the clarity wasn't good enough to see the embossed Braille. I would prompt my student to make vocabulary cards for different activities by having her create an orientation line and then the different words below. Her mother would add print and cut the cards out. We used the same method to make order cards for the different activities. As she wrote, I would screen share print and simulated Braille of what the cards should look like so her mother was able to double check the accuracy. This allowed us to create different activities. Pictured on this slide is a picture taken by my student's parent during extended distance learning. My student is seated at a table with a traditional Perkins Braille writer and a laptop where her parapro and I are doing a virtual lesson with her. The laptop is angled down so I could see where the embossing head of the Braille writer was located. Periodically, the O&M would join us for a collaborative lesson. I would help my student create vocabulary cards for the lessons. Her mom would add the print and cut out the cards. The O&M would then talk my student through the house as her mom held a phone so we could see her. We had her place the labels on different locations and items throughout the house. The student's mom and the O&M collaborated to create a map. The O&M embossed it and delivered it to her home. The O&M incorporated the map along with the cards into lessons where I would work with the student in the writing a social story, and it would lead into an O&M lesson where she would read the map and locate the labeled cards. Another way you can support students on O&M and community-based instruction trips or on trips to the store with families is to create shopping list cards. This is a variation on having a shopping list. My student is more successful reading one card at a time versus a list, particularly when she is in the community. To make the cards, we developed a list of grocery items she usually purchases. I created the cards in a Word document using large print of each item on the top of each card. I printed it on Braille paper and laminated the cards for durability. After laminating the sheets, I added the embossed Braille and hole punched the top left corner and placed them on a ring. I had my student practice reading the cards to build her fluency. Prior to each trip to the store, she helps determine which items are needed and the items that aren't going to be purchased are removed from the ring. I made one set that is kept at school for O&M and CBI trips, and it sent another set home to be used at home with her parents. When having the student practice searching the internet, have the student practice searching the internet by embedding ECC skills, such as having the student look up role models who are blind or visually impaired online. Have the student watch videos and read articles online about the role models. Extend the activity by having the student reach out to the role models who are blind by writing or emailing them. Time management skills are important for the student to develop for home and career. Have the student develop a calendar system, whether it's using a traditional paper calendar or planner or using an electronic system. Be sure not to sway the student to use what works best for you. Encourage the student to experiment with different systems to determine what works best for them. What tools help the student keep track of assignments? Is this tool something that will be available after graduation, or do they need to find a system that will allow them to keep track of assignments and activities beyond school? As you help the student determine what system works best, be sure to accept their preferences and understand their preference and what works best for the student. This could include apps, a paper planner, writing in a notepad, or other system. Have the student identify their top 3 college or university choices. Encourage the student to research transportation options on the campus, who they can contact from Student Disability Services to learn more about what accommodations are available, and compare the features and layouts of the campuses. It's not always possible for a student to physically visit a worksite they may be interested in, particularly if there are travel restrictions. Fortunately, the student can always virtually visit through research. Have the student research what skills are involved in performing the job or career they are interested in. If the student doesn't have a job in mind, select one related to the current unit of study. Have the student learn about the typical wages or salaries. If the job is typically paid hourly or salary, what the typical work schedule is. What tools or equipment are used by the worker, the dress code requirements, where the jobs are located, and what qualifications, knowledge, and skills are needed for the position. Also have the student research if there are any essential job functions that require a certain amount of visual acuity. This next section is on collaboration strategies. As an African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. You will not be effective in ensuring all areas of the ECC are taught and taught well if you try to do it all on your own. Pictured on this slide is a one-man show who has a number of instruments strapped to his body. I challenge you to reflect on your role and realize that you will make a better impact and a more lasting impact on the student if you view the implementation of the ECC as a team effort that is coordinated by the TVI. You will need to prioritize areas and collaborate with team members to ensure all areas of the ECC are addressed throughout the day. Clarify that your role is to teach the ECC and not tutor students in areas of the core curriculum. Point out that you are doing the student a disservice if you offer to teach subject areas in which you are not highly qualified. Finally, explain that your role is to also interpret visual findings and the impact of each student's visual impairment on his or her education and to support the team. At the beginning of the school year, or any time there is a change between quarters or semesters in the classes a student takes, you will want to be proactive and introduce yourself to new team members. Make sure each team member is aware of the student's unique visual needs and the accommodations they need. Review the student's records and needs prior to talking with the teacher so you can best answer their questions. It's always helpful to provide vision simulation activities to help team members better understand the student's needs. This can also be helpful to use with teams you worked with for a while if there are new tools introduced or a change in the student's needs, or if there is a need for a better understanding of the student's needs. Also, be sure you maintain reciprocity and listen to their concerns and what you need to help support. Remember that working on the ECC is a team effort. Effective teams work closely together and in sync to best support students. Other team members may provide intense services in some ECC areas with collaboration from the TVI. This could be the OT, special education teacher, or para working intensely and daily on activities of daily living. The speech and language pathologist may work on social skills with a group of students. Just remember, these team members shouldn't provide instruction in some areas, such as Braille instruction, as only the TVI is qualified to provide instruction in Braille. At the beginning of the school year, or any time there is a change in teachers or a change in the student's use of vision, it is helpful to provide a unique needs page to all teachers. Although this information can be found in the Functional Vision Evaluation Report and within the IEP, I write information on a separate page, ideally just 1 or 2 pages, so it can be a quick reference to team members. I include my contact information as well as a summary of the student's vision, the frequency of vision services, and my contact information. The environmental accommodations the student requires, the instructional accommodations needed, the material accommodations needed, and the supports needed and the classroom testing accommodations that are identified in the IEP. It is essential to be clear when specifying the accommodations the student needs. Identify what the purpose of the tool is, why the student needs the accommodation, when it should be used, where it should be used, and show how it works. I started using Google Forms as a way to collect feedback from teachers on whether students are using their prescribed low vision devices or using assistive technology. This will give you good feedback on what the student is using throughout the day. I include the pictures of the student using the tools so the teacher is sure to know what the device is that they're reporting on. I have the teacher report on the frequency as well as what tasks they are being used for. I find it helpful for both the student and the upcoming teachers when the student puts together an All About Me presentation. I have the student start by sharing how they are just like any other student, then talk about their unique vision and what accommodations help them. This gives the student practice giving their disclosure statement and helps them reflect on the accommodations they use and why it helps them. I find it can also help a student embrace their tools and gives teachers a better understanding of the student's visual needs. To best support the student, you need to do your part to contribute to positive team interactions. You can do this by providing ongoing collaboration and really getting to know the team members and their concerns. Make sure the decisions that are made are team decisions. While you may feel confident in your role, remember that you can learn strategies from others who have their own areas of expertise too. Be sure that when you provide feedback, you are thoughtful in your delivery and provide specific feedback. And finally, remember to provide information and resources to where team members can find more information. You will need to customize your consult time, not only depending on the student's needs, but the needs of the team. Some teams will need more support as they may not have experience working with the student with similar needs, or they may have worked with the student for many years and not need as much support. Be responsive and ready to jump in and provide consultation as any issues arise. The next section is on the importance of being a professional. As David Halberstam said, being a professional means doing your job on the days you don't want to do it. Always strive to be a professional in all your interactions. This doesn't mean that you can't have fun and be yourself, but remember to be polite and choose your words carefully. Speak with kind words and use manners. Treat others the way that you would like to be treated by being respectful and remember to listen. Lead by example by being a positive example. Don't belittle others. Keep confidentiality. Remember, you never know who is related and who may be neighbors. Reflect on what goals you want to accomplish for the year. Just like you need to write SMART goals for your students, be sure to write SMART goals for yourself. Be specific about what you want to accomplish and make sure they are measurable, achievable, and relevant to your growth as a vision professional. As you're deciding on a goal, be sure to find your why. For example, if your goal is to be more organized, why? So you are less scattered, stop wasting time trying to locate materials, and are prepared for lessons? Your goal may be to avoid litigation by becoming better at conducting evaluations and keeping better documentation. Your goal may be to stop fearing referrals by becoming knowledgeable in an area you are less comfortable with or working with a certain disability. Or your goal might be just to stop bringing home so much work by managing your time better. There are 3 key characteristics of being a professional that are outlined in the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Be humble. Remember, there was a time when you didn't know either. Be complimentary of others and acknowledge your weaknesses. We all have them and you're not hiding it from anyone. Be hungry. Go above and beyond in your work and look for opportunities to grow. And finally, be smart. This doesn't necessarily mean book smart, but be smart about team dynamics and adjust accordingly. Be sure to provide clear communication about the student's visual needs and accommodations. As I said earlier, avoid VI jargon and adapt to the learning and communication style differences of different teams and team members. Do everything you can to help teams understand instructional strategies to promote student success. To be an effective TVI or vision professional, you need to have good in-person communication skills as you interact with so many team members. Dress like a professional. Not only will you feel better about the way you look, but others will be more inclined to treat you with respect. Be aware of your body language. This is a tough one for us introverts, but hold your head up and smile. Respect other people's personal space as well as their time. Don't dominate a conversation and choose your words carefully. I prefer emails and text to phone calls as I can refer back to conversations, but we all need to make phone calls at times. When you do, be sure to be respectful of other people's time. My cell phone is the best way to reach me, but I am still cautious of who I give it out to. If you receive phone calls outside of the workday, remember it's okay to let it go to voicemail and return the call during your work hours. As itinerants, we don't always spend a lot of time in our offices. It can be helpful to have your office phone set to deliver messages through emails. I have this feature on my office phone and it minimizes the need to provide everyone with my cell number as messages are sent directly to my email. If you want to be viewed as a professional, your written communication must always be high quality. This includes your written reports as well as any email communications, progress reports, and IEP statements. Nothing looks worse than using poor grammar, the wrong name, or the wrong gender in a report. As you're writing any email, text, or report, always keep in mind that any form of written communication can be pulled and used during litigation. Stop and think if you would be okay with your email being read back in court. When I first entered the field, it was nice to have team members who were willing to proofread my reports. One of the especially helpful things my supervisor coordinated was to have all TVIs serving students through the Governor Moorhead preschool program submit sample functional vision reports. It was so helpful to see different report styles and the way things were worded. Knowing how helpful that was for me, I decided to make some sample reports available for you to review. Pictured here is the cover to the sample functional vision reports that are available for free on my website. Instead of writing individual goals, or in addition to them, you may decide to write a team goal towards implementing the national agenda. You can work on this goal as a group project, but you don't have to have a large VI program to implement the national agenda. You can implement it even if you are a VI program of 1. I created this checklist as a way to ensure I was doing everything I could. It is broken down into 10 goal areas. The areas include timely referral process and child find efforts, parent participation, supporting personnel preparation programs by being willing to mentor students in those programs, making sure students are receiving the appropriate amount of service through caseload determination, as well as making sure administrators understand your role and advocating for more vision professionals when needed, providing an array of services, providing quality and timely assessments, providing students access to instructional materials in accessible formats, instructing students in all areas of the ECC, transition planning that includes coordinating with voc rehab agencies, and finally, professional development opportunities specific to visual impairments. This next section is on dealing with challenges. As the saying goes, we don't grow when things are easy, we grow when we face challenges. It can be challenging to work in isolation. We are oftentimes singletons or the only vision professional in the area. For this reason, it's important to become the expert in your area. Seek opportunities for professional growth, build your resource library, join listservs or social networking sites and forums, and network with vision professionals at conferences. Maintain relationships beyond the conference, building your network and support system. Going through due process and litigation isn't fun for anyone. You may not have done anything in question, but when a due process case begins, the entire team is involved and all records are reviewed. In light of that, always ensure that you maintain high professional ethics and maintain your data collection. Know that everyone makes mistakes, but when you do make them, try to learn from your mistakes and the mistakes of others as well. Always be professional in your interactions and with all communication, and follow best practice and stay current. Another challenging area that is common is troubleshooting assistive technology. It's helpful to create a resource list of vendors in your area. As you attend conferences, be sure to stop by and see the newest technology and see it demonstrated. Even if you don't have a student on your current caseload that needs it, you never know when a student may end up needing it or a new student may be added to your caseload. If you aren't able to physically attend conferences, see if vendors can come to you and demonstrate products. Develop relationships with the vendors, as some may be able to provide support and may be able to provide technology on loan or to trial. Okay, let's be real. Sometimes we're on teams that can be downright dysfunctional and toxic. You can't always avoid these situations, but you can choose to be the model of professionalism. You can do this by focusing on your job, being careful with all communication, and maintaining high professional ethics. Whenever possible, keep your distance from toxic people. If your program vision team is toxic, focus on ways you can grow professionally outside the team or program. Don't let the negativity keep you from excelling in your own career. Who knows, maybe your positive example will set an example to others. I won't deny that there are some real challenges with being itinerant and being in such a small field. We often feel like outsiders or the ugly stepchild within a school or program. Although they may not change, your perspective can change. Remember, we don't grow when things are easy, we grow when we face challenges. You will either become stronger or you will struggle. Keep in mind that sometimes challenging roads, and I'm thinking of the white-knuckle roads in many of our country's national parks, can lead to the most beautiful destinations. In this next section, I'll provide suggestions for growing in your career. As Ronald E. Osborne said, unless you try to do something beyond what you have already mastered, you will never grow. Even if you've been in the field for over 20 years like me, there is always room to grow. Even seasoned professionals need to continue to learn. The switch to virtual instruction during COVID-19 was a perfect example that it is never safe to rest on your laurels, especially when it comes to technology. We all must be willing to learn new instructional strategies, techniques, activities, and technology to best support our students. And, as I said before, everyone makes mistakes. Always seek ways you can grow in your knowledge and become a leader and resource for others, particularly for new teachers entering the field who need support. If you're new to the field, you need to become knowledgeable in all areas to be well-rounded. If you have been in the field a while, you need to stay knowledgeable by staying up to date on current trends and practices in technology. If you don't know answers or how to work with a student, find out. Find someone to mentor you. Research in professional books or online resources and build your resource library. The best way to stay current is to attend vision-specific conferences and read professional publications. Take advantage of on-demand or live webinars and conferences from a wide variety of leaders and fellow TVIs in the field. While it's okay to have an area of passion within the ECC, as TVIs we must be well-rounded. I remember when I first entered the field, I couldn't imagine working with students other than preschoolers. I am so grateful that I began working itinerantly with students of all ages. Not only does it allow you for more job opportunities, but by working with students of a range of ages and abilities, you will know what the student needs to prepare them for future settings. I also find it helpful to attend conference topics that are geared towards adults who are blind or visually impaired, as I can learn the issues my students may face as adults and better prepare them for the future. The Texas School for the Blind developed the QPVI tool that is a great tool for balancing caseloads if you work on a team. They recommend maintaining a diverse caseload not only to balance caseloads, but to ensure that each TVI maintains skills needed to serve a diverse caseload. Listed here are key recommendations. Each TVI should work with at least one Braille student when possible. Caseloads should be clustered, meaning one TVI serves students within a school. Equalize hours of service. Each TVI serves a wide age range. All TVIs serve students with severe and profound disabilities, and all TVIs serve students who use low vision devices. This formula currently represents my caseload, and I love it. It challenges me to develop lessons and activities for a broad range of students, and clustering students minimizes travel, which allows more time for material preparation. Brown bag sessions are a corporate term otherwise known as lunch and learn. These sessions are ideal for teams, but you can think outside the box by joining larger VI teams or by utilizing video conferencing. Your team can identify areas you would like to learn, and team members select which topics to present to the team. In this way, you can learn from each other's strengths and get experience presenting to an audience. You may feel frustrated that you don't always have access to vision-specific trainings. Remember, there is always something that you can be learned from attending trainings, even if they are outside our field and from collaboration with team members. I've listed some common roles in the school where you can learn tips and strategies. You can learn leadership and presentation styles from administrators. Administrative assistants may be able to help teach you how to create documents in formats you are less familiar with, such as using Excel or creating fillable PDF documents. Classroom teachers can give you ideas for classroom management and using different instructional platforms. Speech and language pathologists can give you strategies on social, communication, and language skills. OTs can teach you tips for developing fine motor skills, visual perception skills, and visual motor skills. PTs can teach you positional strategies, and teachers of deaf and hard of hearing can teach you sign language. I have to say, one of the most valuable sessions I attended was at a technology conference. There was nothing specifically related to visual impairments, but this is where I learned how to create a website which I had no idea would go on to support those in the vision field around the world. As you're growing in your career, surround yourself with the right people. These are people that elevate you to be better, those who can act as role models and have positive attitudes. At the school level, surround yourself and learn from teams that collaborate well. Get actively involved with your state chapter of AER. Typically, this is where you will find leaders in your field. Network with them and work on teams with them so you can, in a sense, be mentored by them. As I said earlier, you will need to research and find resources in the field. If you're like me, you save notes from courses. These can be helpful to review, and it can also be helpful to take new coursework in areas that weren't covered in your coursework or areas that weren't covered as thoroughly as needed. Attend VI-specific conferences and trainings and take advantage of networking opportunities to get to know colleagues in your field. Maintain a list of web resources and build your VI resource book library. We should all strive to be the best versions of ourselves and contribute to the vision field. You can do this through grant writing, participating on professional learning teams, presenting at conferences or workshops, mentoring new TVIs, becoming duly certified as an O&M or CADIS, publish an article, software or book, develop curriculum for the vision field, or participate in field testing. As you grow in your career, always seek ways to help others, work hard, and find your passion. Listed here are ways I found to contribute to the field while embracing my passions. I developed a web resource and educational resources where I can share the research and activities I have developed. I participate in my district's VI-AT team. I am currently the Georgia AER president, and I was one of the 2018 APH scholars and served on APH's ESAC and EPAC committees. I served on the Georgia Braille Item Review Committee, and I serve as a committee member on the Georgia Vision Educators Statewide Conference Planning Committee. Pictured on this slide is a painting I did of my beloved Perkins Brailler for my office. I also blended my love of art and Braille by creating custom hand-embossed Braille necklaces. Thank you for joining me for this presentation. I hope you found the information on itinerant teaching tips and strategies to be useful. I have listed my website address where you can find more resources and articles on teaching the ECC along with my email so you can connect with me. Your closing code for the presentation is TRICKS. Thank you again.